Okay, so, well, hi, Kathy. It's so great to have you with us here today.
Hi, it's great to see you, Bill, and you, Connie, my favorite people.
Oh,
You're seriously, you're both one of my favorite people. Anyway, good, great to see you. Great to see you.
well, what we wanted to do is we wanted to have a couple of interviews with you in order to bring your background, your experience, your knowledge onto more of the public domain. We
Mhm.
have the opportunity to be with you every couple of weeks, and you've got such a depth of knowledge in terms of this understanding that we share in our coaching that has made such a difference in so many lives of the clients we work with. And we found it a little hard to find you on YouTube. So we thought, why don't we have a couple of interviews so we can get a little bit more out there for the
Sure.
public
Yeah.
to see. So
Okay.
this is where we are. So Cathy has been teaching this understanding. She's been with Sydney Banks, who had the original experience that kind of brought this whole understanding onto the planet, you might say. That was back in the 70s, wasn't it, when he had that
Yeah. Yeah.
experience?
Yeah.
So Kathy's been doing this for like 40 years or so. She's taken this understanding into the prison system, into the corporations, into the mental health field. She's worked with people around relationship and marriage. And so, one of the first questions that comes to my mind, Kathy, is how is it that this same understanding can be what people are looking for to help people in a prison setting, people whose lives have kind of turned to crime? This understanding helps them get grounded and live a healthy life again. And then the next week, you're talking to engineers in
Yeah.
a corporation
Yeah.
and helping them to be more productive in what they're doing. It's like, how can this understanding be so fundamentally helpful to
Yeah.
people, whatever they're looking for?
Well, I have a fun way of telling you how I discovered that, and it's really kind of a fun story because yeah, it's true. I was working, teaching inmates in jail, teaching kids in juvenile hall, and teaching the principals like day after day, and maybe doing some teaching with people in the nonprofit world. But my colleagues, George and Linda Pransky, they were teaching the principals in this big defense company. And we were having this huge conference, and the gentleman that brought them into this defense company, Linda Prince, kept saying, "You need to meet this guy. You need to meet this guy." So I said, "Fine." So I finally met him. I said, "Listen, I would love to see how this plays out in the corporate world because in my mind, it was going to be different." So, because seriously, in my mind, well, it would have to be different because I'm teaching inmates and kids in juvenile hall. So I was curious about, well, how would that work in the corporate world? So he said, "Sure, you should come." He invited me. I paid my own expenses, so I flew to New Hampshire, and so I showed up. And George and Linda, they were rolling out this new program for this huge company, and I was like a fly on the wall, and I was so excited. I'm a new student again, and kind of watching the whole thing. And so they're rolling out how they're going to do the program. They're going to have large groups and then breakout groups. And so and they were so George is assigning his team the different breakout groups. You're going to do group one, two, and Kathy, you're going to do group five. And I'm like, oh no, 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 no. I don't know how to do this. I only know this. No, 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 you're going to be doing group five. And I said, no, really, I don't know how to do this. And and after a while, George says, well, no, you're doing it. And you don't say no to George. So okay, I'm doing a breakout group. So finally it's time. George did the main group and Linda did the main group. And then they said, okay, you're going to break into groups and reflect on some innocuous sentence that they came up with, which had a word that I didn't know what the word meant, which is kind of funny. But anyway, so we go off. So I walk into the room with my breakout group. It's like 8 engineers. And I walk in and it was like I wasn't even there. They were just talking and where are you working now? And who do you have? And oh, and are you working on literally they ignored me. Well, not they didn't even it's like I didn't even exist. They were just there to hang out and have a good time. And I'm sitting there like, oh my God, I told them not to put me here. And I just sat there and I felt horrible. You know, like I just wanted to shrink and disappear. And so I'm sitting there and all of a sudden I'm realizing, well, wait a minute. The kids in juvenile hall do the same thing. when they're talking about this, they're bouncing off the walls. And I'm like, well, I know how to deal with that. So all of a sudden I stood up and I clapped my hands really loud and they look, I go, we're not here for this. No, we're not here for this. You can do that at lunch. No, we're here to do what George asked us to do. But this is what we're going to do. Each one of you is going to introduce yourself and you're going to just share anything you want about, you know, a hobby or your family, but this is what we're going to do to start with. And they're like looking at me shocked. And I said, okay, let's start over here. So the guy said, well, my name is, and I work here and I have 3 kids, you know, so he started doing it. Fourth one into it, they started to crosstalk a little. I'm like, no, 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 it'll be your turn. We're here to listen to him. So I did that the
Good.
whole time. So when we were finished and they left, I'm sitting there like, that was a nightmare for me. I'm just sitting there head in hand, like, oh, this was. So I go to leave, and outside the door, and the door was open the whole time, is Linda Pransky and the guy from the company.
Uh,
They heard the whole thing because they
wow.
wanted to see how I was going to do. And I went, how long have you been there? And Dick Bezoin, he says, you are hired. I need somebody like you to hit them upside the head. You know, George's people, they're nice people, but no, I need you. This is what I need. So he literally gave me an honorary, a stipend or whatever you want to call it, huge check, paid for all my expenses. And that's when I started working in the corporate world. So
Wow.
the point of the story is, as I was sitting there shrinking, thinking, oh my God, this is horrible. I don't know what to do. These people are different. No, wait a minute. They're no different than the kids in juvenile hall. They're no different than the inmates in jail. So even when I went back to teaching the inmates in jail, they knew I was going back east because I told them I'm going to be working with this engineers and stuff. So they said, well, how did they do, Kathy? Who's easier to work with, them or us? And I said, well, what do you think? And they said, well, we're probably easier because we know we screwed up. And so then when I was teaching the corporate world, we had a video of the inmates learning. So George insisted on showing this video of the inmates talking about the principles, and they were so impacted by it. And guess what they asked me? Kathy, who's harder to teach the principles with, us or the inmates? True story. I said, well, what do you think? And they said, we're probably harder, aren't we? I go, yeah, you guys are definitely harder to work with. And that's when I saw there's no difference. That was my first experience of realizing whether inmates in jail or very successful, brilliant scientists, engineers, Orthodox Jews, Israeli soldiers, you know, you name it, we're all the same. As human beings, we all operate the same way. We all operate from these principles. We're thinking beings and we're thinking our way through life. And the fact that we're human, that's what makes us the same.
Mhm.
So that when we see what's going on in the world, the thing that I look at when I'm not caught up in everything is no matter what, everybody is operating the same way. And everybody intuitively knows what this is. And when things aren't working out well, like with what's going on in the Middle East or what's going on in the States, they're just not connected to it. Because wherever your mind goes, that's what you will experience. So if your mind is not connecting to this limitless wisdom or this limitless well-being or mental health or whatever you want to call that, if it's buried in all this personal belief system, then you're going to get the belief system. But if people slip into this other place, resiliency, like in Ukraine, the resiliency of the people, you could just feel it through the TV screen. So that's what I saw. Regardless of who people are, what their circumstances are, they're all creating their experience all the time, all the time. So that's how I discovered that. Is that a cute story? I
That
mean,
is a great
seriously.
story.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, and because I'm sitting there thinking, I don't know how to deal with these guys, and I don't know how to, And Roger always, when he mentored us, he said, get into a person's world. Like, when you go into the corporate world, how do they see it? What do they perceive are the obstacles to their well-being? Same thing with inmates in jail. What do they perceive? And then you just get a feel for how their language and how they see it, and then use their world as metaphors or examples to help them reflect on their own experience. So that's how I came to that.
So
Beautiful.
beautiful.
Yeah,
So what I hear you saying, Kathy, is that you saw that everybody operates the same way. It's like we all have the same operating system. And what really made the difference in terms of people having success with people in any of these settings is that they didn't go to try and come up with different coping strategies and new ways to behave. Rather, this understanding, the way what you were teaching was helping people to understand how to access this inner resource. Is that what it is?
absolutely. And it's funny because the engineers, when we were teaching, they're very visual, mechanical people. And so we were trying to be philosophical and they were having a hard time with it. So all of a sudden I'm in front of the room and because their hands are, I said, okay, I'm going to draw a picture. And I use the old time movie projector, which we used to use in the early days. And I thought, I'm going to use that. So I drew the old movie projector. And I said, so here's the film. So the film is thought. The light that goes through the film is consciousness. And then we have to plug it into the power source. So when you plug it into the outlet, that's mine. So I just did that. The whole room popped.
Mm.
Well, why didn't you do that to begin with? We get that. It was so cute. We get that. And I said, well, I'm sorry, but we were just trying to help you reflect. But obviously you guys are engineers and we forget that's how their minds work. And they could totally relate to it. But here's the cutest part of the story. So we call a break and this gentleman comes up to me. He said, now, Kathy, you do realize that that movie projectors now, they have a CPU and they're computerized.
So
He was
cute.
trying to correct my metaphor.
Yeah.
Because he got so caught up in the metaphor. And it was so cute. I said, sir, no, I know that I know they're computerized. This was just a metaphor. No, I know how they really work today. And he kind of gave me this strange look, like, and he walked away puzzled. He just sort of
Very sweet.
Mm.
Oh,
cute
it's really,
story, very
yeah.
cute story.
Mm.
But
Yeah.
again, when people see this in the context of their own lives, and you just never know how that's going to happen.
Yeah.
I'll give you one more cute story. When I was teaching the kids in juvenile hall, these are boys, age, 15 to 17, and just you can imagine boys being locked up. Anyway, so I decided I wanted to show them a Sid video. I don't know what possessed me, but what the heck, right? So I said, listen, you guys, and I had a great rapport with them. I said, I want to show you this guy. He's a Scottish guy. He has this weird accent. He's from Scotland. That's called a Scottish accent. But for some reason, I just want you to watch this video. And as soon as they heard video, oh, we'll watch a video. See, anything that's a video, right? I said, but here's the deal. I would just like you to be respectful. If you don't want to watch it, just put your head on the desk. But if you could just allow other people to watch it, even if you don't. But so if you want to just not watch it, no problem. So I put the video on and I'm sitting there and the video is probably about 35 minutes, but I'm kind of watching them to see how, are they hanging with it? So they're watching and they're watching and they're watching and they started to get a little antsy. And then I stopped the tape when they started, I could tell they were getting restless. So I said, so what did you guys think? And you won't believe this. One kid said, wow, he was really deep. I didn't understand what he was saying, but wow, and another guy said, yeah, man. And they did their, whatever language they use with each other. And there was this whole room like, whoa. And I'm like, they got it. They freaking got it.
Mm.
They got it.
Wow.
They
Wow.
got it. And I'm like, see, it passes up language. It passes up culture. It passes up any barrier. Gang kids. You think gang kids listening to Sydney Banks. And I don't know why it possessed me to do that. But for some reason, I just felt, like, well, let's just see what happens. They got it. And I said, yeah, it doesn't matter. You didn't understand the words. You guys got it. And they said, well, how do you know that? Well, what feeling are you in right now? They're like, yeah, we're in that kind of wow, cool feeling. I said, yeah, then that tells you got it.
That's great.
That's so great. And so, as people in the prison setting, the juvenile delinquency,
Mhm.
as they kind of got it, it seemed to make a difference in terms of how they then related to life from then on. Is that true?
Yeah, yeah. Well, and it manifests in many different ways. There is no predictor as to how this would change, but like one time I was hanging out with the boys, and you usually don't ask why they're locked up. You don't ask them about their crime. But for some reason, I said, "What are you guys doing to get locked up? What are you guys up to?" And so they go, "Well, we steal cars." There's a whole group there that was their thing. They steal cars. Why are you stealing cars? Like, what's the thing about stealing cars? Cathy, it's fun. It's exciting. And I said, okay. And so why would you do that? I mean, what do you mean it's exciting? Well, Cathy, there's nothing going on. It's boring out there. And so when we steal cars, it's just really fun and exciting. And I said, oh, okay, so you do it because you're bored. And they're like, yeah, and it's a drag to be bored. So I'm like, okay. I said, now, do you guys know what boredom is? And they're like, yeah, nothing's going on. I said, well, what if I said it was something else? And they're like, well, what do you mean? I said, well, what if I said all boredom is that your mind's going really fast on the inside, and it's making everything look slow on the outside. And they're like, could say that again? They're like, say that again. And they had been slowly, we talked about thought and stuff. And I said, yeah, that's all that's happening. So you're experiencing boredom because you're creating that. Your mind's zooming so fast that when you steal cars, what happens? You slip into the zone. You're in the moment. You're in that feeling. I said, yeah, that's why you keep doing it. And I guess I would do it too if I had that great feeling. But the boredom feeling is coming from you also, not from what's not happening out here. So they sort of said, well, whatever, they're kind of like, whatever, which is fine. I love that when they're just kind of like, like perplexed or considering. So the next week I come in and this one kid goes, Cathy, I know what you meant, but I know what you mean. I said, well, okay, tell me what happened. He said, you don't understand. When you're locked up, time just goes so slow. And all I can think about is everything going on, my girlfriend and my friends, and they're having fun, and I'm stuck in here. And I mean, the week just goes by so slow. And he just kind of went on and on about that. He said, but after you said what you said, when I went back to my bunk, I started to realize that's all I do is lay around in my bunk thinking about everything that's going on. And I decided I'm just going to start doing stuff because they have stuff for them to do. So he just started getting involved, doing whatever. He said, Cathy, the week went by so fast and I don't feel bored. And I'm like, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And the other kids are like, what did he say? What happened? And I go, okay, now he's going to teach you. He's going to tell you what I meant. And so he took over. I said, so you tell them what you discovered and how that played out. And true story, true
Wow.
story. And
Great.
so something about what I said hit him. And he saw why he was, time and, he's bored and depressed. And, all of that feeling was because of where his mind was, as opposed to just being in the moment and just being involved, with whatever's going on in juvenile hall, because they do have lots of activities for them.